Greetings, shalom, shalom. Welcome back to part 2 of Who Will You Serve, or Who Do You Serve, I should say. This is a man called Gavar. Let's get right back into it. We're talking about America and the unique opportunity that America now offers to us as Berean believers, people who search the scriptures, who want to live our lives in the latter days pleasing unto Yahuwah. We want to seek to obey the Torah. We want to make him a priority because Messiah told us to seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, which is obedience to Torah. And all these things, he said, shall be given to you, added to you. It's a profound paradox, because if you're going to spend all your time seeking Yahuwah, right, how are you going to feed yourself? How are you going to have a house? How are you going to have a car? How are you going to take advantage of all the modern luxuries of our modern society without working a job? That's why you're here, right? That's what the title said. That's what brought you in here. So let's get busy talking about that, shall we? America. America, America. God shed his grace on. You know, we all heard the song, right? This country used to be a great country. And I think the reason why Trump's campaign did so well is it touched on this yearning in our hearts that, America used to be a great place. What happened to it? How do we get to this mess that we're in? We have a pedophile in charge of our country, and we have a cackling hyena who just tried to take over the office of president, got knocked down and sent back home, right? How do we end up the nation in decline that we are? Well, it didn't start off that way. We were founded by Puritans, Anglicans, and Reformers of many denominations, not Catholics. We fled Europe, fleeing the persecution of the Catholic Church and the monarchy. And they came to America in search of a land where they could build a place where they could pursue the Creator. They could serve the Most High and live according to their conscience, which was led by Scripture, led by they used to call it sola scriptura, only the Scripture, only the Scripture. So I remind you, it was a perilous trip back in the 15th, 16th century. Well, it didn't have modern cruise lines with a mess hall to go buy your food and sit down and enjoy a good meal and sit out in the fantail and watch the dolphins, flipping up in the North Atlantic. Going over from Europe to America, the waters were colder and there wasn't no dolphins. I remember when I was in the Navy, we used to go through the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, and we'd see the dolphins on the fantail flying up, following us along as we cut through the water. But it wasn't like that in those days. It was a very dangerous trip to come over from the old world to the new world. And when they got here, there wasn't anything here but wilderness, jungle, and savage natives that felt like it was their place, and they didn't really take too kindly to these Europeans coming over. But they came over here, and they kept coming over here, and they established communities of faith. If you research it, the first chartered communities were chartered by independent mercantile. Some of them were by the crown, the king, but a lot of them were funded by successful businessmen who sought to establish a beachhead for freedom and liberty governed by nothing but the Scripture. And they brought the common law with them, which was rooted and grounded in Scripture. And then we eventually, fast forward to 1776, and we fought a war to secure the common law, the reign of God, the reign of Yahuwah, the reign of Elohim on our land. And it was once a righteous nation. So what happened? You say, Gavar, what happened? How do we end up in the mess that we're in right now? Well, a series of false flags, basically. And in the wake of those false flags and distractions, as unsurreptitious, unscrupulous, evil men, lawyers, up to their old tricks, same guys, different times. They kind of took over things and set up a whole alternative system of government under the 14th Amendment, which I talk about on other videos on my channel. I'm going to produce a series just based on that, because this new group I'm with, we're seeking to abolish that evil, racist amendment, which, by the way, the congressional record of 1967, you can Google it, June 13th, 1967, the congressional record, there's about a 6-page triple listing entry where Congress, for some odd reason, right before the civil rights movement started, decided to go ahead and document the fact that the 14th Amendment was not ratified properly and it's unconstitutional. But started off with the Civil War, which was really an insurrection of the federal government, and the wrong side won, in my opinion. If you read the Confederate Constitution, we'd have been better off if the South had won. But in the wake of the Civil War, we had the Organic Act of 1871, which made the United States government into a corporation for the first time ever. Instead of being an unincorporated association of free men governing themselves, it became a corporation. And then eventually they bankrupted that corporation. It was 70 years later, in about the 1930s, that they bankrupted that entity, and it was bought out by the international bankers. And now the government that you think of as a government isn't really a government. It's a privately owned, for-profit corporation, and they manufacture these false flags. They're called world wars. They're called Vietnam, 9/11, the Iraq War. And with all these distractions, the lawyers who started back in 1878 with the founding of the American Bar Association in Chicago, Illinois, about 100 lawyers got together, and they sought to circumvent and infiltrate Congress. And we're now at a place where about 98% of the people in Congress are lawyers. So there's your problem right there, big problem right there. Basically, we stopped self-governing, and we allowed a corporation to take over our government services, and they ended up selling us back all of our rights as privileges. That's how it happened. We forgot who we were. We forgot that we, the people of the Most High who came here and settled this land in the first place, we are a set-apart nation. We're a nation of priests and a nation of sovereigns. And we, in this day and age, should be coming out of her and not partaking. And I'm sorry, my screen is located, I apologize, right over the bottom line there. Just have to deal with it. But the last word there is sovereigns. I'll try to be aware of that as I move forward and fill you in on what the bottom words are. A nation of priests and sovereigns. And that's what we're supposed to be. But we somehow got off track. And the way that happened was through the 14th Amendment, like I just said. So let's talk about what it means to be a U.S. citizen or a citizen of the United States, because on every government form you ever see, they typically always ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? Don't ever check that box without a qualification. And I'll provide my students with a full explanation of how to do that. So let's talk about what a U.S. citizen is and how you can avoid that trap. I just fixed that might be a little bit better. Yeah, I'm kind of off screen, but that's okay. You don't need to see me. I'd rather you read the screen. So let's read. This is from a Supreme Court decision from California, 1855, which I think will really shed the light on the lie of U.S. citizenship and how you don't want to be ever considered that. At its inception, all citizens of American states were citizens of the states of the Union. Citizens generally called themselves citizens of their states unless they were traveling outside of America. If you recall, Robert E. Lee called himself a Virginian, and when Lincoln offered him, people don't know this, but Lincoln actually offered the first general he offered the job of invading the several states and starting the Civil War. The first general he approached was General Robert E. Lee, who eventually became the general leading the Confederate States of America on the South Side, but he told Lincoln, take a hike. I'm a Virginian first and a U.S. citizen second. So prior to the enactment of the 14th Amendment, they may have referred to themselves as citizens of the United States. It was a generic expression, but it had no legal application yet. And they said in the California Supreme Court, ex parte Frank Knowles, by metaphysical refinement in examining the form of our government, it might be correctly said that there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. But constant usage, arising from convenience, and perhaps even necessity, and dating back to the formation of the Confederacy, not the Southern Confederacy, but the Articles of Confederation of 1776, has given substantial existence to the idea which the term conveys. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. So, federal citizenship versus state citizenship. Whatever state you were born on, that's your citizenship. Okay? Don't be fooled by the fact that the State Department of the United States, which unlawfully exists, at least in the passport division, I don't believe they have authority to issue passports. It's just not there, and I can document that, but I'm not going to do that here. But Teixeira versus Jordan, another Supreme Court California case from 1927, said the following: that there is a citizenship of the United States and a citizenship of a state, and that the privileges and immunities of one are not the same as the other is well established by the decisions of this country. Wait a minute, you say. Guevara, didn't you just tell me that 1855 there was no such thing legally? But now here we are in 1927, and the court is saying there are two different things, and the rights and privileges are not the same. Well, this is because of the 14th Amendment. Because the 14th Amendment created federal citizenship. Okay? Well, the question then becomes, can you be a citizen of a federal corporation? Because that's how United States is defined in their codes. 28 U.S.C. 3002, subparagraph 15, I believe it's A, maybe H. It's there, though. Defines United States as a federal corporation. And the UCC 9, paragraph 307H, under location of debtor, defines the United States as being located in the District of Columbia. So, my brothers and sisters, were you born in D.C.? Maybe some of you were. A few of you might have been. But most of us were born in one of the states of the Union. So unless you were born in the District of Columbia, you can't even be a U.S. citizen unless you declare yourself to be. That's why you should never, ever check that box. So I ask you, brothers and sisters, can you be a citizen of Walmart? How about McDonald's? How about Home Depot? Well, of course you can't, because they're corporations. And so is the United States. And also you should be aware of the fact that 18 U.S.C. 911 says the following: whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years. That's in the U.S. Code. So wait a minute. If you're born like I was born on New Jersey, I'm a New Jerseyan. I'm a New Jersey state citizen. If I represent myself to be a U.S. citizen, they could put me in jail for up to 3 years. So you don't want to ever do that. So, now that we talked about the lie of citizenship that the government created, let's talk about the next lie that they created. I talked a little bit about this in my first video, Let My People Go. So we're going to retouch just a couple simple points on the flip side, the next video. Come on back. We're going to close out part 2 of Who Do You Serve? And this is Guevara closing out part 2. Come on back for part 3, and I'll probably wrap it up in part 3. So come on back.